What's up, guys? This is Carter Thomas with Coin Mastery TV. If you haven't already, join the email list. Go to coinmastery.com/invest. Join on, get some free info, get some handy tips and tricks and all that good stuff as we march onward towards our inevitable financial revolution domination. Incidentally, I thought it was hilarious how many people commented about Banana Town. I honestly have no idea why I said that, but glad it provided some sort of entertainment because this is purely entertainment. Nothing about this is professional. There's no professional advice at all on this channel, but I do really appreciate you guys get a kick out of that. Hilarious. Today we're talking about the obvious, which is that our good friend Bitcoin had just a monumental spike early this morning. So what we're going to do today is we're going to walk through what's going on, potential reasons why it happened, and then what it may lead to in the future. And then also the way I'm looking at it, how I'm going to play this. And we're going to talk about, obviously, the implications on the shorts, what's going on with Ethereum, as we've been talking about, what's been happening with EOS, which has had a pretty wild 48 hours, market cap, a couple theories around this. Honestly, I put these tabs up here just to jog my memory. A few things, not only about Ripple and their new partnerships, but just a way to view coins in the market. And finally, end with just an idea that keeps recurring, that both, from my experience and also just from talking to a lot of pro traders. So anyway, as you guys may not know, if you haven't woken up yet or seen the news or whatever, we had a massive spike. I'm on the 4-hour Bitcoin right now, just looking at just this huge green candle staring us in the face, and which went off a couple hours ago. I believe it was right around 4 a.m. Pacific. So that's about 5 hours ago, give or take. And excuse me. It was just like a rocket. And if we go over to the market cap, you can see, just looking at this in the last 5 hours or whatever, market cap shot from 270-ish up to 300 billion. So 30 billion in a matter of 60 minutes or so, which is pretty extraordinary. I haven't seen that in a very, very long time. So it was really good to see that. But here's a few things to think about as we get into this. So the first thing, yesterday we talked about these levels. And so I'm just going to draw these levels. If you're listening on the podcast, I'm drawing a rectangle right around 7,800. And the reason I'm drawing it right around there, one, because of the volume we talked about yesterday, but two, 4 hours, kind of a good area to do this on. You can see how these candles have these big bars where there's no breakage, like there's no wicks on them really. It's just kind of a huge thing. That is often a very good place to look at previous support and resistance levels. So you look at the 78 and you come up here and you could make a case for maybe right around here. Kind of, this is a bigger zone, but that's where a lot of the volume was. But kind of all throughout here, I would say is the next big resistance zone, and then you get up to this, up to 10.5, and even this level 92. But these are the two that are kind of most imminent. So I think that's the first thing that needs to happen, right? And you can see it already happening on Bitcoin, at least on this chart. It's coming up. It blew through this on a wick, on just like an oversell, and now it's consolidating right around this level. Now this is very good for the chart, the fact that it did all this. Now we got to go up here. But the real test is going to be when we can get all the way back up here. If we can clear out this 11.7, 11.8 area, that's when it's party time. But the bigger news, or the bigger thing, I think, is, I'm going to delete that first box, or the second box, I should say, is that a lot of people have been focused on the second half of this down cycle. So I'm on log right now, and if you draw a trend line from the March top to, let's call it the April 9th, very local high, you can see that there's a trend. And so a lot of people traders, maybe people, if you follow on Twitter, are like, oh man, look at this breakout. This is clear confirmation. And the smart thing to do would be you wait and make sure that this line holds as support. It doesn't even need to touch it. It just needs to come down and move up. It doesn't go back past this line. So we've broken through, we've blasted through. So on the short-term trend, it did in fact break through. However, if you go up to the longer term, let me change the color here. I'm just going to do gray. And you get into the longer term trend line, you can see that we still have a good amount of room to go. So you see what I'm saying? So when you draw it, this is not perfect by any means. I totally understand. I'm just getting close as I can. We have not come close to the big trend line. And if you take log off and you draw this line as if there's no log, you can see that in fact this local breakout that just happened, in fact, touched it perfectly. So there's a lot going on here, right? I mean, it depends if you go log, go not log, or whatever, short term or longer term. But the good news is this is getting closer to a longer term trend. I know that I could probably be a little closer there. And it pierced it with a wick, but you can see that longer term trend line is actually providing some pretty serious resistance on this volume. And so this may be an indicator that we need more sustained bull volume, which hopefully will come through. But I think that's really important to see. It really depends on the different ways that you look at the chart, different ways that you think about it. So that's the first piece. So the second piece, why did this all happen? Well, there's a few potential reasons, but one of the biggest ones, which we talked about yesterday, there's just an overwhelming number of shorts. Right? So if you pull up the chart, if you ever want to see this, you can go on TradingView and look up BTC USD, and you'll see Bitfinex shorts as an option. And we were looking at it. I mean, it was all absolutely out of control up here. And look at this. It just in a matter of, let me go down to the hourly here. It's just plummeted. I mean, it's taken a huge dive. And so what that means, among other things, is that there was a huge spike in volume. A ton of people, or I should say, a ton of money was put in to buy a Bitcoin very, very quickly to liquidate a lot of these shorts and force a lot of them to cover at the same time. So if you don't know what this means, so someone asked us on Twitter, I thought it was a great question. If there's a lot of pressure coming down on the top, right? It's like a lot of shorting pressure, which is what we saw. And it's going to hold it's theoretically going to hold the price at a certain point, even push it down. Seeing the same thing on stocks like Tesla right now. Tesla is actually the most shorted stock on the stock market right now. So that's a good example. And then there's people on the bottom, the bulls, right? The people that want the price to go up. And it's a constant battle, at least on the margin side of it. People that are taking out big amounts of leverage and money to make those bets. Because you can't, so we'll leave it at that. What happens is that as those shorts start to pile up, they really increase the pressure, but it also creates a lot of tension. And if you are a bull and you have a deep pocket, and you really, obviously, if you really believe in the underlying asset, in this case Bitcoin, what you can do is you can overpower all that short volume, assuming you have enough money reserved, that when you buy it, you basically fill all those short orders, or you liquidate them if they're on margin, right? So that they have to close their short position so they don't lose money. And what happens is that all these shorts disappear, the longs are still there, and now there's kind of a vacuum in the middle. And typically that makes it very, very easy for the price to be pushed up because the order books get really thinner, I should say. So that's the underlying concept. So that's why it's kind of counterintuitive when you see a lot of people shorting on a stock or an asset. What often happens is that somebody comes along and just liquidates all the shorts as much within their power, with all their power, to create that vacuum so that they can just, the rest of their money, it's very easy to push the price up, and it makes the entire asset, gets the momentum, and the whole thing moves back up. So Bitcoin is very unique in that sense, and it's small enough for people to do, but still having liquidity. It's not necessarily regulated versus something like a Tesla, which is much, much bigger, obviously highly regulated on, the new public stock exchanges and everything like that. But that's how it goes down. And so we were seeing this huge amount of short pressure over here, as you can see on this indicator. And as soon as this very, very quick volume went up, which makes a big difference because people actually have to go in and like close their short positions if they're reacting to this. That's why it can be so effective at clearing out the price and bringing it all up. Okay, so that's part of the big picture. Now, actually, before we get into the other coins, I thought that something to think about is the timing of all this. And I'm 100%, I can appreciate and I'm aware that this is a global market. And I know that the United States by no means is the center of the universe. And I don't pretend to think that way. But this went down. I'm going to go over to the hourly here. This went down, 5 hours ago. So let's call it 4 a.m. Pacific. Now that's 7 a.m. New York time. So let's assume that this was done. All right, let's start at 3, 2, even 2 o'clock in the morning Pacific. So let's say it started at 5 a.m. New York time. Let's just call it that. There's two things that if you were a New York-based entity and you were the one driving this, let's just assume that was what happened. Because for that amount of volume, that quickly, it's going to have to be pretty concentrated. So you can assume it's either collusion or it's one entity that did this. You would do it for two reasons at that time. The first reason is because not a lot of people are awake yet in the United States. So yes, it's a global market, but you still have a huge amount of people, especially institutional money, that isn't even that has to sleep on and they're not expecting this. So that's one reason. And the second reason is that if you do it let's say your whole office decides, all right, we're going to go into the office tomorrow at 2 a.m. and we are going to execute this at 4 a.m. Eastern time, because it gives them an entire day to be at the offices and monitor this whole thing and make sure it all plays out before they go home. Now, in cases like this, if you're dealing with this kind of money, chances are you're probably going 24 hours a day anyway. But there's a human element to the timing of all of this. I obviously can't prove any of this, but I do know that as these institutional hedge funds, any traders, whoever, what do you want to call them, they are regular people. They have lives. It's not a 24-hour bot that does this all the time. It's people who at some point need to, they're going to use time arbitrage as an advantage. So I don't think this is necessarily repeatable, but it is something to keep in mind. Meaning, from a strategy standpoint, which gets into the third piece of the conversation, what do we do next? I think you wait the whole day. I think you give this a 24-hour cycle before you see what happens. You wait and see if this pumps again. You wait and see if this retraces. But there's too much volume coming out too fast for me to believe that this is a natural market force. Me personally. Other people may do something differently, but I'm going to wait and see what happens specifically as it relates to this trend line, but more importantly, just how does this play out? Does this kind of slowly come back down? Does it shake out? What does the margin requirements look like? How does the volume look? How does this impact altcoins? How does this impact sentiment? So that I can make a better decision. Okay, so that's where we're at. Exciting stuff. The other obvious, everything pretty much across the board from a US dollar standpoint or fiat standpoint for anyone in a different country has done really well. But again, we've been looking at Ethereum for 4 or 5 days now. We've been looking at the same line, and it just continues to look better and better and better. And, as it relates to Bitcoin, I think that Bitcoin still has a lot of the mandate in the space, but this is a really good sign, especially when you start to look at it breaking out through any sort of trend line. I can take this margin off there. I also think that as we start to use Bitrex's chart, as we start to get, as if hopefully this continues to move up, or Bitcoin starts to show some bull action, we can start to look at Ethereum against Bitcoin again, because the next big trend in all of these coins is going to be what decouples successfully from Bitcoin as the big traders come in, as liquidity changes, as fiat on-ramps change. And so we'll start to go back to looking at Ethereum versus Bitcoin chart as opposed to Ethereum versus USD, which is what we've been looking at as a way to gauge leaders in the market. So it's still looking good. It's looking strong. And you can see that whenever you go on. I'm just going to refresh CoinMarketCap here, switch over to BTC. You can see that obviously on USD, they're all killing it. But if you switch over to BTC, you're still seeing a lot of these altcoins exceed the pace of Bitcoin. So overall, good stuff, good news. The other big news was EOS, which 5 minutes, I don't know why it's on 5 minutes. Let's go to 30 minutes. But you can see with EOS, it had kind of a slow drop. I pull up the volume so you guys can see a bit of accumulation happening here. For anyone listening, it's like end of March, first week of April, and then you saw this huge spike. Now, the best I can tell, this is coming because they're just releasing what's called like Dawn 3.0, their new release, but that happened a couple days ago. And then they're doing an airdrop. Now, maybe I'm missing something, but to me, I can't tell if the airdrop is legit or not. And maybe it's just because I haven't done enough research on this, but I think it's legit. And so please go and do your own research to make sure that if you are going to participate, I believe it's on the 15th of April. So what's that? 3 days from now, Sunday, or whatever time zone you're in, which is driving a lot of this on top of just the sheer euphoria, the new development. And I'm sure that there's more things at play. But what I do think is that is interesting about this is the first time in a long time that we've seen a very, very high liquidity asset doing a allegedly legit airdrop, not a hard fork, an actual airdrop, one-to-one airdrop. And it has the ability to short it, which you can do on Bitfinex if you are able to get a Bitfinex account in wherever your jurisdiction is. So I think EOS, whatever you want to call it, this is super interesting, but I also think that this is going to be a buy the rumor, sell the news situation. I mean, how many times have we seen this before where, it's just kind of the same old stuff? What you don't know is it never plays out the exact same way. Like Z Classic didn't play out the same way. Litecoin had, some weird stuff, Monero, but this is a airdrop as opposed to a hard fork. Very, very different. So I'm not really going to touch this one until the 15th. I'm going to wait and see. If it dumps, I think it could be an interesting buy opportunity, but kind of a wait and see. You can obviously see this is retracing. I'm sure there'll be some activities, some trades to be made here, some pumps to be made, but a little too. I don't like the buy the rumor, sell the news thing unless I get in way down here. I don't like playing in this space. It's not where I do well. Some people do. So now, final piece of price / coin stuff. As we talked about yesterday, right? So we were down here yesterday, give or take, in Bitcoin. So right around 6,800-ish. And we're talking about how, okay, this looks like it's going to clear out. It's probably going to trade out up to these 8,400 levels. If it did, that'd be amazing because that means it breaks this trend line. We'll see what happens. But getting this 78 was a big deal. And in the meantime, this is going to provide some bullish sentiment, which is going to lead to some altcoin movements. So as I mentioned yesterday, I was going to go through, start buying up like small amounts of altcoins. And I think that that's a very important piece of the puzzle, is that as Bitcoin and even Ethereum, as they get hopefully continued bullish sentiment, at least in the short term, but then it starts to pause, you better believe that people are going to go back to altcoins because people chase yield. Investors, traders, everyone chases yield. Doesn't matter if it's crypto, doesn't matter if it's bonds, stocks, Forex, whatever. Everyone always chases yield, short and long term. So people are going to go wherever they think they can make the most money. And so what I did was just go through, bought up like, I think my thing was $500 of a handful of coins. And I think that that's the key here, is that one of the most paralyzing things in crypto, and also just in, you can call it investing, trading, whatever you want, whatever, is the feeling of you gotta be right, and you gotta be right with your whole stack of chips. And a very, very good habit to get into is to feel like everyone's going to feel some FOMO. Like I know everyone's feeling it today a little bit on some level. Be able to like hold on to that, just be okay with that, and then make a decision with like 2% or 3% of what you think you should do. And that may sound crazy. You're like, oh, I don't have $1,000. I'm not going to buy $30 worth of something. And I would say, actually, that's exactly what you should do. You should go and buy $50 worth of a coin or 2 coins or whatever, and not try to nail this with everything you got. It's a really good strategy. And so yesterday I went through, bought, 5 or 6 coins, like $500 a piece. They pumped and it was good. I'm going to scalp them if it was 20, 30%, but that's just a strategy. That's a good way to play the game. Stick to your plan, but start small. You don't need to nail it, even if you're in the hole. Playing the smart long game will get you out of the hole much better than playing the high risk fast game. So I think that's really the move. And when it comes to what coins to pick, that comes down to your own research and the community and all that good stuff. Okay. Now, a quick piece of news here. Santander, which is a bank, I think they're Brazil? Is that right? Anyway, Santander, obviously a massive international bank, and Ripple launched the first blockchain international payment service for retail customers. I believe it's going to be in Spain, Brazil, Poland, and United Kingdom. What's interesting about this is that I think companies like, first of all, this is awesome. Like, get people to use this stuff, right? It's get the word out, show real use cases, with the eventual goal of somehow being able to justify valuations in a comparable sense, which we've talked about. But I think the other piece of this is when you are doing your research, because I know what's going to happen in the next week or two is that people are going to start to dive back in and go through the list and start researching and looking at your portfolio and being like, all right, which coins do I think are going to go the biggest or whatever. If nothing else, when you look at the research, ask yourself, what do you think about the coin? And then ask yourself, what does the rest of the world think about this coin? Both retail investors and also corporate and people, right? Corporate partners or people that are actually going to do deals with things. And I can tell you that Ripple, while it's, kind of widely doesn't have a very good light shed on it in the crypto community, because it's actually more of a startup, a centralized startup, than it is a blockchain crypto or whatever. That doesn't change the fact that they know how to play the game to get big money in the door and do big deals, right? They're donating to a lot of good charities right now. I mean, donating is in quotes because it's like they're donating Ripple. So it's like, all right, well, what are you really donating here? But they know how this game is played. And that's a much bigger deal than people think as it relates to who is going to become the winner of all these. Now, let me be clear. I don't know if Ripple is going to be that winner by any means. But what I would encourage anyone to look at is go beyond just the tech. Go beyond your personal, not beliefs, preferences, and find out, okay, I might not like Ripple, but who would? And make a list of those people. I might not like Bitcoin Cash, but who would? I might not like EOS, right? I'm just using those examples. And go through the list and try to be as objective as possible, because that is going to be a big deal down the road. What we see as winners or things that should be out there are not necessarily indicative of what will be the winners or what will be what get implemented into the bigger ecosystem. So I think that that's a huge, don't fight it. Just, it is what it is. Play the cards you're dealt, right? We always talk about that. Last piece, I tweeted about this last night. As soon as making money seems inevitable, all the rules will change. I tweeted this last night, and the reason why is because we were, over the last couple of weeks, I would say, more like the last week, there's been this idea of this desire for certainty. And if you haven't heard, obviously I talk about this from time to time. I talked about this at length early on in the series back last summer about people, humans have 6 basic desires. Certainty and uncertainty are 2 of the biggest ones, meaning you need to have certainty. You need to know what's going to happen on some level. You also need to have variety in some level. And right now, in uncertain times, the desire for certainty increases. And what happens when people have a desire for certainty is that they try to find patterns that they can add meaning to, or they apply logic or rationale, more importantly, to things that will, they create a reality that may happen. So one example of this is the market's got I know it's going to go down, so I'm going to short the market. It's inevitable that it's going to happen, so I might as well just do it. Same thing last year when everyone was just throwing money at altcoins. Everything. It's just it's going to go up, so you might as well put all your money into it, and it keeps doing it, and that's the whole what messes with your mind type of thing. But what happens in markets, and this is one of the big things to keep in mind as the big players come in, especially on the trading side, is that the more people that are playing in the space, the more that those patterns that may work get eliminated very, very quickly. And I think that this big spike is a good example of that, where we may start to see some patterns. People they open up a BitMEX account and they're like, oh, I can trade on this. But as soon as they think they got it figured out, the market just terminates them because they don't play by the fundamental rules. And so I think that this is really important in the sense that as you are going through and making your decisions, as you're building your portfolio, as you're potentially buying altcoins, watching Bitcoin's price, watching Ethereum, whatever, remember that the fundamentals of investing will always work. They're hard and they won't make you rich quickly, but they work. The tactics, the stuff that you're like, oh, I think I found this thing where the price will change at this time, and on Friday afternoons is when you see the biggest price swings. Those kind of pattern tactic things that seemingly make money or inevitably make money, those are the things that end up just destroying your portfolio. And so I think that if nothing else, this is a kind of a call to arms for everybody to realize, look, this may go up. I don't know. We're going to see what happens with trend line. And if it does, it also means it's going to get more competitive. And when things get more competitive, the only way to win is to go to your fundamentals and get really, really good at the fundamentals, it's like the boring stuff. Take your profits when they get there. Be very, very smart about your entries. Focus on not losing money. Use very small position sizing. All this stuff that nobody wants to do because it won't make you rich tomorrow. But that's the kind of stuff that's really, really important, because as the market will start to do more and more of this stuff as a way to eliminate people that don't know what they're doing. And it's kind of serendipitous timing. I tweeted this 6 hours later. Bitcoin goes through the roof, liquidates 40,000 Bitcoin worth of margin contracts. So I can't stress that enough. Just follow the fundamentals. They work for a reason. Get rich slow. Works. It's a much better strategy. All right. Great times, guys. Exciting. Again, just sit back, let this thing watch, put together your plan, start small, use a small position size. If you are going to get in, be cautious. Don't lose money. That's the big thing. And with that, I'm going to rock out. See you guys tomorrow. All right. Peace out.